Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. And we are at the start of the international free agent signing period for 2045. Before we get into our decision making, I just wanted to note that it appears that I missed a vote in the voting for what to do with Deshaun Seifu. So I apologize for that because that would have left us in a flat-footed tie as to whether to bring him back for another year or to automatically retire him. We ended up bringing him back for another year because the vote was not deadlocked. But if the vote had been deadlocked, and it turns out it actually was because of my own negligence in not counting the votes properly, I would have went with my vote at that point, which would have been to retire him. So hopefully there will be less controversy than this in the upcoming 2024 presidential election, although my hopes are that the claims, and hopefully only claims, of voting irregularities may be more significant 9 months from now than they were in terms of the voting as to what to do with Deshaun Seifu. But given that I probably would have retired him if I had counted properly, I will make a decision that this is going to be his last year. Regardless of what happens, I will retire him manually at the end of this upcoming season. So that will at least allow those who voted to retire him to have their will carried out at the end of this season, even if he decides for some reason he wants to come back. So this will be Deshaun Seifu's 20th season coming up, and it will be his final season no matter what happens. So don't know that that's really necessarily fulfilling the will of the voters, but it's the best that I can do at this point. As we get into international amateur free agents, appreciate the thoughts from Wymie943 and Jarek Braxton as to what we should consider doing. And as we talked about in the last episode, it's kind of an interesting class with some lower end talent. Wymie943 really liked the catcher Vincent Blasquez. I don't love his poor defense and his low work ethic. If he fully develops, I agree he can be an exceptional hitter. I just question with the low work ethic whether he's really going to reach his true potential. And I also expect that he's ultimately probably going to go for more money than we can afford, since we are way down at the minimum of $4.75 million to spend. So we're not going to go for him, and I am going to try a more volume-oriented approach this year. But I'm going to not really try to look for bargains. I'm going to hope to get some of these volume-oriented players signed relatively quickly. So we're going to make an offer to Wanadame. Really like his potential defense with that 70 range. Says he's looking for $180,000. We're going to offer him $200,000 to start. And we're going to do similarly with several of these players that we talked about in the last episode who aren't looking for crazy money. Another one is Austin Bashford, looking for $270,000. Really like his personality. We're going to offer him $300,000. See if perhaps we can get one of those shortstop prospects locked up early. And we're going to do the same thing pitching-wise with the two left-handers that we liked. Sergio Cisneros, another guy looking for crazy money, $380,000. We'll offer him $400,000 and see if we can get him locked up. And last but certainly not least is Frank Aguirre, who is a player that Wymie943 liked, and I do as well. We're going to offer him $200,000. So offering all of these guys a bit more than they're looking for. Don't know that we're going to get any of them signed at those levels, but want to be relatively aggressive. And then the one higher end player we're going to make an offer to right now is another catcher. It is not the catcher that YME943 wanted, but it is the catcher that Jarek Braxton believes might be the right way to go. I like the 60 catcher ability, like the high work ethic and intelligence for a catcher. And he does have a bat that could be useful with 60 defensive ability. So Sergio De Aces, going to make an offer to him, says he's looking for 1.5 million. We'll give him that full offer right there. You can see that puts us at 4.4 million in total offers to the 5 players that we've... Actually, that can't be right. I guess it is, but I've got to be missing something. Oh, that's because there's other... Yeah, that's not just international free agent contracts. I'm doing this math quickly, but we've got 2.1, $2.6 million put out at this point on international amateur free agents, plus the 1.8 million offer that we had made to the not international amateur free agent, but just the international free agent, Daniel Aguayo Leal. So my hunches will have to go higher to get most, if not all, of these guys. But with the fact that at this point we've got 2.6 million out in offers to them, that still gives us another $2 million to increase offers to these people. I think it's conceivable that one of the pitchers and one of the shortstops ends up going for pretty big money. But if we could come out of this with De Aces and one of the lefty pitchers and one of the shortstops, to me that would be a reasonably interesting IAFA period. And our aggressive stance really surprisingly has paid off very quickly. Starting pitcher Sergio Cisneros signed, the catcher Sergio De Aces signed, and both of the shortstops Austin Bashford and Juan Adame signed. So now we're in an interesting situation where we've got 4 guys that we like signed as international amateur free agents already. Actually, did we get them all signed, and did I just miss an email? No. It says we've got 2.4 million signed so far. Okay, so Frank Aguirre wants more money. Well, how much more money does Frank Aguirre want? 310,000. Yeah, we can afford that. So we'll offer him 350, and we could still be in a situation where we could get all 5 of these guys signed and have some money left, which would not be the worst thing in the world. I don't really know exactly who a trade target for us would be, but I guess we could also just invest some of that money in another international amateur free agent or 2. So we'll see what happens with Aguirre at this point, and then we're still waiting to find out what's going to happen with Aguayo Leal as well. And we did just get Frank Aguirre signed as well. We had to go to 600,000 to get him signed, more than he was looking for initially, but still really happy with the international amateur free agent class that we put together at this point. Spent $3 million so far, so still have $1.75 million left. We'll check in on a couple of these higher end players who are still available. I'm guessing most of them are probably out of our price range at this point. Juan Estrada, we can't afford. Arrigo Montelongo, offer greater than our remaining pool as well, and I imagine the situation is similar for David Aguiar. Actually, it's not. I don't necessarily think Aguiar is anything special, but if he fully develops, he's durable with a plus bat, some positive traits in the clubhouse. Not looking for crazy money. I don't think we're going to be able to ultimately trade away 1.75 million in money. We could certainly do it for just garbage, but given that our 40-man roster is already full, and cash alone isn't going to get us a great player or even someone who's probably likely to make our 26-man roster, I think I am going to put an offer out to Aguiar, offer him $750,000 and see what he thinks of that, and that'll still give us $1 million to potentially play with in the coming weeks in the trade market. Still waiting to find out what happens with Aguayo Leal and the offer we made to him. You can see some familiar names, Shamar Jenneret and Joe Gallagher, among the free agents that are still out there, as well as Steve Anderson. Taking a look at some of the top pitchers who are available. Jeremy Grimes, a lot of relievers out there. Doesn't look like a lot of top-end starters available. Not that you'd expect them to be here in late January. And David Aguiar has signed with us as well. So that gives us a 6-person international amateur free agent class, and they're all guys that we had in our camp. And that's only 10 people maximum, so being able to sign 6 out of the 10 people we ultimately had in our camp, I think is a pretty successful IAFA period. Now, granted, none of them were the top-end talent in this class, and we certainly weren't even, according to our scout, bringing the 10 highest potential players into camp because we excluded some based on weaknesses in their personalities, but pretty pleased to have $1 million left to potentially use in trade, while also having signed 6 guys that we had some level of interest in. Hopefully that will really help replenish our DSL roster in the coming years, and maybe have a couple of those guys turn into useful major leaguers down the line. And although we're pleased to get those 6 players signed, and we'll take a quick look at them now, Aguayo Leal still hasn't even let us know what he's thinking from that offer that we made to him a while ago. But again, a 6-person class for us here, which I think is pretty interesting. It looks like Pittsburgh had a similar approach, and they signed a lot of players very early as well. But Sergio Cisneros looks like he could be a pretty interesting left-handed reliever. He's going to need that knuckle curve to develop to have a second pitch. Certainly no guarantees there. But he's durable, has a high work ethic, and certainly worth taking a gamble on, in my opinion. Santiago de Aces, we talked about him a little bit at the top of the episode in a little more depth than some of the others. I think he could be, at the very least, a useful backup catcher with that catcher ability and a bat that doesn't look like a total disaster. And if we maybe get a little bit lucky with some talent change randomness with him, he could end up being a starting catcher. It's not impossible. The shortstops, Austin Bashford out of Australia, definitely a borderline guy. Best case scenario is probably a utility infielder, but he's got an almost perfect personality, 60 infield range, not going to be a gold glove winner defensively, but could play a lot of positions and hopefully come close to being a major league average offensive player. Realistically, he's probably a 80, 85 OPS plus kind of guy. But as a utility infielder, if you can play a bunch of positions, there's some value there. Juan Adame, different type of prospect. The high end of his bat is not even as high as Bashford's, but with that 70 infield range and pretty solid error, arm, and turn 2 ratings, as well as average speed, he could be a potentially useful defensive substitution / utility infielder. No guarantees that either of those bats are going to end up being major league quality, but as cheap lottery tickets, I think we certainly could have done worse. Frank Aguirre, second left-handed pitcher who we got signed, like the high work ethic, 16-year-old who's already throwing in the low to mid 90s, really good stamina, really good at holding on runners. Question is whether he could potentially be a starter or is going to have to work out of the bullpen. He'll need both the curve and the knuckle curve to develop significantly to be able to potentially be a starter. But a 16-year-old, certainly think he was worth rolling the dice on. And then last but not least, David Aguiar, looks like a solid bat, durable, some positive personality traits. Certainly not a superstar, but a guy who could become a useful contributor down the line. So with 6 guys signed and $1 million left to spend, feel like we're probably not going to troll too much for any other people. But if we can't actually find somebody to trade for, or that's willing to trade for that money, can always take a flyer. Rodolfo Aguiar, very questionable whether he's a future major leaguer, but you can say that about pretty much 99% of the international amateur free agents in any year. So we're going to keep exploring some opportunities offline in the trade market and maybe with some other IAFA players. But pretty pleased to have the 6 guys that we've signed. And we've made it to the start of spring training. So before we finish off this episode, I'm going to focus on a couple of things. Aguayo Leal never got back to us. He was just listed as pending, and then all of a sudden I saw he wasn't anymore. Never let us know what he thought about the $1.8 million offer that we gave him. For some reason, he preferred to sign with the Wichita Rush Independent League minor league contract. It's, I don't know, it seems a little odd to me that he wouldn't have accepted the $1.8 million guaranteed major league contract that we offered to him. But as it is what it is. I feel like we put our best foot forward with him. He'll be a free agent again. I guess we could purchase him for $250,000. That's interesting. I don't know that I've ever done that before. Are you sure you want to purchase Daniel Aguayo Leal from the Wichita Rush for $250,000? Sure. He was placed on our lowest minor league team or our reserve roster. Perfect. So we got him, and he's got a minor league contract now. 3 option years left. I don't understand why he wouldn't take the $1.8 million offer that we made to him. But even better, now he's a member of our minor league organization. We don't have to worry about putting him on the 40-man. We don't have to worry about paying him major league minimum or more than major league minimum, which is what we had offered to him. And we'll get a chance to try to develop him. He's at our DSL team right now. I think he's going to be a completely dominant player in the DSL. Yeah, he's Babe Ruth in the DSL. So once we get to the actual start of the season, we will figure out the most appropriate level for him. Probably will end up inviting Aguayo Leal to spring training. So pretty happy with the way everything worked out there, even though it was kind of weird and coincidental in a way. But we'll buy him off of a independent league team for $250,000 when we were willing to spend $1.8 million and give him a major league contract. We did end up signing a couple additional international amateur free agents. Weren't really able to find anything interesting at all in the trade market. These last 2 signings, I think, are less interesting than our first 6 were, but they're still guys who are lottery tickets. Rodolfo Aguiar, starting pitching prospect, most likely ends up as a right-handed reliever, and uncertain if he'll be good enough to get above the low levels of the minor leagues. And then we also brought in center fielder Luis Hasbun. Decent range, decent arm, good adaptability and work ethic. Don't think he's ever really going to be a major league hitter, but another guy who gives us a little more depth in the lower levels of the minors, and another guy who does have a positive personality to hopefully positively influence those players on his team who are the real prospects. So 8 international amateur free agents signed this year for us, and we still have a little more money to play with, although we don't really love the prospects that are still out there at this point, but that's certainly the most we've ever signed in this playthrough with the Buffalo Wings. And in our next episode, we'll talk through our spring training roster, try to keep this team healthy through spring training, ultimately make some interesting decisions on who the 26 players who are going to be heading north with us are, and prepare to get underway to try to defend our World Series championship, become repeat champions for the first time in this playthrough, and take advantage of this pretty big budget that we have for next year that, as we've talked about, is likely to be significantly less a year from now, given our new owner's economizer, fiscal personality, and profit priority. So this could be the last best chance for us to get a 5th title with the Buffalo Wings, and we'll be finding out in the not so distant future how we do in that quest. But until then, we've got the spring training and roster decisions ahead of us in our next episode, and then we'll get the season started. And until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.